Okay, hold on. Let me see. Can you hear me now? Yo, yo, yo. Okay, I'm back. All right, y'all. I'm back, man. Technical difficulties, how they be. But listen. Can you hear me now? You should be able to. I seen a little light blinking, I hope. I'm gonna go over. Okay, I'm back. Look, I'm gonna go over how MAGA falling, but how they did eugenics to play with black people to create certain races. I'm gonna get into that after y'all, but check this out. I'm gonna break this.
You're seeing this MAGA civil war getting worse and worse, messier by the day, with more big names jumping in to fight. And while some on the right, they've tried to dismiss this as some sort of sideshow, this is so much bigger and more important than they'll admit. And I mean, there is a very real fight over the future of MAGA and the right in general taking place. Right? They can try and act like this is some small little blip, the loud minority, but the numbers show that's a lie. And while this has been brewing for a while, and you can go back to my Monday and Tuesday shows for a deeper recap, the quick version is that recently things kicked off because Tucker Carlson interviewed white nationalist Nick Fuentes on his show last week. And among a decent chunk of the right, that sparked some backlash because Tucker is seen, even though he's not with Fox News anymore, as kind of this institution. He has a huge platform. In the interview, it was friendly, and Fuentes, among other things, talked at length about what he called organized Jewry. And so a whole bunch of conservatives, most prominently Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, and Ted Cruz, condemned Tucker and Fuentes. But then you had a lot on the right coming to their defense, or at the very least, Tucker's defense, arguing that he was merely exercising his free speech and shouldn't be canceled. And well, now the latest high-profile pundit.
With Tucker trying to get with the new wave. He know that Nick Fuentes is new and he's been on CNN, so he's smart. He's trying to get on a new wave.
And to make that argument is Brett Cooper. And very notably, Brett is a former Daily Wire host who was once dubbed the female Ben Shapiro before she left and started her own show.
They're doing all of this. They're freaking out because of how popular and impactful Tucker is. Tucker, right now, is the #1 podcaster in the world. He is neck and neck with Joe Rogan as they ignore the obvious shift in ideology and attitudes of their base. Because you're so angry that the conservative base's attitudes are rapidly changing, that Nick Fuentes is getting national attention. And unfortunately for you guys, yes, the attitudes are changing. So again, it makes sense.
Right over the course of her show, she took shots at several people, including Mark Levin.
Hitler admirers, Stalin admirers, Jew haters, American haters, Churchill haters. You're damn right we're going to cancel them and deplatform them.
Also, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham.
But if you ever run...
Y'all heard him. He's saying we're going to deplatform him, man. You got to watch out.
For office, as a Republican, and you embrace this weird shit, we're going to beat your brains out.
As well as Republican Representative Randy Fine.
Tucker Carlson is the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. He has chosen to take on the mantle of leader of a modern-day Hitler Youth.
And you had Cooper going after all of them for pretty much the same reason. Hypocrisy.
This is just so incredibly hypocritical. Like, haven't we all collectively sat on our shows, sat on X, and talked about how dangerous it is and how irresponsible it was for leftists to just call anybody they hate a Nazi? It is the same kind of inflammatory rhetoric that killed Charlie Kirk.
And then with all this, a comment that you made that probably got some of the most attention was a comment about Randy Fine, who's Jewish.
I mean, he obviously, I'm sorry to say, but he obviously cares more about Israel than he does, principles like free speech. So, buddy, like, my advice to you, Randy Fine, is just move to Israel at this point.
Right, and that seeming to echo something that Fuentes said to Carlson last week.
If you're China first, you should live in China. If you're Mexico first, you should live in Mexico. If you're Israel first, maybe you should go live in Israel.
Right, it also appeared that Fuentes himself took her comments the same way because he posted on X. Daily Wire alum Brett Cooper says Randy Fine should move back to Israel because he cares more about Israel than free speech. We are never going back to the way things used to be. Enough is enough. America first. But then we also heard a much different take on the fighting from Daily Wire host Matt Walsh, who blamed the Republicans' embarrassing defeat on Tuesday's elections on exactly this kind of infighting.
We've watched the right-wing commentariat rip each other to shreds over offensive group chats and podcast guests and so on. Right now, a lot of people are kind of drawing lines on the right. But here's the line that we really need. Conservatives who have actually shown an ability to win and move the needle culturally and politically on one side versus conservatives who have never contributed meaningfully to any victory at all. And after last night's elections, it's clear that we should just not listen to those people ever again. In my view, The right must unite against the people who want us dead.
Though then you had Fuentes responding to him saying your fence sitting has grown tiresome, with him then going on to post about what he called lunatic Israel first Jews and ethno-narcissistic bullies. Right? Despite calls for Walsh and a few others for unity, that really doesn't seem to be what's happening. At least not at the Heritage Foundation, right? Because one of the biggest things that catalyzed this civil war was a video statement that its president Kevin Roberts put out last week.
We will always defend truth. We will always defend America, and we will always defend our friends against the slander of bad actors who serve someone else's agenda.
Nick Fuentes making them stand. He ain't trying to be with all of that, standing in the middle. Be a white nationalist, be racist, or else.
That includes Tucker Carlson.
Right, and that it shocked a number on the right to see the head of mainstream American conservatism's most prestigious think tank throwing its support behind Carlson. And then actually on Monday night, Roberts partly apologized during a speech at Hillsdale College.
A few days ago, I posted a video, truly with the best of intentions. But I have to tell you, to the students, that this old history professor made a mistake. And my mistake was not saying we aren't going to participate in cancel culture. We were not. My mistake was letting that, which we will never backtrack from, override the central motivation that I had in doing that.
Right. Speaking of that, y'all got to check after this. I'm going to show y'all the eugenics that these people did, man.
One of those ideas that really worries me. It's an idea that has become cachet, not just on the left, but on the far fringes of the right. And that's anti-Semitism.
But then Roberts also apologizing again personally to his own staff yesterday, reportedly saying, I made a mistake and I let you down and I let down this institution, period, full stop. And then adding that he was willing to resign, but saying that he felt a moral obligation to clean up the mess he created himself. Though none of that appears to have been enough to prevent this rift from tearing part of the organization apart. Right? Because you have the Washington Post reporting that at least 5 members of its anti-Semitism task force have now resigned in protest. Distinguished fellow Chris DeMuth has left. And there was another fellow, Amy Swear, who reportedly told Roberts to his face that his handling of the controversy was, quote, a masterclass in cowardice that ran cover for the most unhinged dregs of the far right. But this also is others at Heritage felt differently, with one person, for example, at the meeting reportedly asking what would happen to those who agreed with Roberts and Carlson, and another comparing staffers who spoke with reporters to Judas. Even Roberts' own speechwriter, Evan Myers, reportedly suggested that Heritage's attempts to address accusations of anti-Semitism would eventually mean he'd be required to attend Shabbat dinner, which he said would conflict with his faith. To which another executive reportedly shot back, I'm deeply sorry that you cannot see that as a generous offer, but rather a personal attack on you. So clearly there's a lot happening, and we're gonna have to see what happens with Roberts' leadership there. But also amidst the fighting, we got to hear from Carlson himself, because he went on Dave Smith's show and explained that he initially had reservations about bringing Fuentes on.
For one, Nick had attacked my family, my father, my wife, one of my children by name. For another, as I've said a million times, I thought he was a Fed. I did suspect that. I don't know if that's true or not. I raised that with him. But basically, in the end, I decided Nick Fuentes can't be canceled. They've been trying since he was a freshman in college. It doesn't work. In fact, he's gotten bigger. He is enormously talented. Anyone who denies that is lying. And he has like a not fully coherent, but a semi-coherent kind of position.
Now, this is why I feel like Tucker is really bullshitting us. He see Nick Fuentes as like a young LeBron James in basketball right now. He's coming up and he want to get on his team. He understands how this works. But he's not going to just say that. You really want to be on the man team because y'all kind of aligned.
And I would like to hear what it is, because that's kind of my job. And I'm also interested because he's the most influential voice for men under 30 in the United States.
But then with all that, you have people like Ben Shapiro, the National Review, and the Wall Street Journal countering that Tucker's defense that he's just an innocent journalist doing his job and hearing people out, it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. With them arguing that he barely challenged Fuentes at all, he never brought up his worst comments and just let him say things like,
we do, on some level, need to be pro-white.
Without any objection whatsoever. And that is, it's very clear that Tucker is more willing to grill the absolute fuck out of a guest if he wants to, like he did with Ted Cruz.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government. You're the one who claims about the country.
Now, they said they do want to be pro-white. I'm going to show y'all how it backs up with science. The science.
Right. So from that, you had the National Review concluding, why would Carlson choose to take an oppositional tack to a senator who has been fighting for conservatism for decades, but not to a podcaster who praises Stalin? The obvious answer is that Fuentes is an avowed Jew hater, while Cruz is a staunch supporter of Israel. Right? And then with everything that's happening, you did have Carlson kind of saying that it all appears to be about Israel and the future of the GOP.
This is a fight over what happens after Donald Trump. What does the Republican Party look like? What happens after Trump goes? And that's what this is about. That's why they're investing the energy in this. That's what the rage is about, because they don't want to lose control of foreign policy. I just can't say that enough. It's about foreign policy. They don't care about domestic policy because they don't care about the United States.
But also with that, you have people who argue that the Civil War, it's at least as much about anti-Semitism as it is about Israel. For example, Jamie Kirchick saying in the Washington Post, this episode has forced an overdue reckoning on the American right. For far too long, the problem of anti-Semitism has been allowed to fester there because too many conservatives have been reluctant to speak out against its chief propagator. Finally, its battle lines are being drawn. But ultimately, that's where we are for now, though we're going to see more, right? There appears to be no shortage of creators out there, and even politicians throwing haymakers. As while we wait to see what happens next, I'd really love to know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions here. But then next up, in a different kind of news today, we need to talk about this just crazy Shein sex doll controversy. Or because France just announced that they're moving to suspend Shein because they discovered that they were selling incredibly childlike sex dolls. Also understand, when I say childlike, this is the doll in question. It straight up looks like a little girl holding a teddy bear. I know I probably shouldn't say this, but whoever came up with this idea or made this, can we set them on fire? To the moderators, that's just a hypothetical question, not a call to violence. But connected to that hypothetical question, you had the Telegraph describing a doll as having an erotic body and having realistic genitalia. And so the outrage has been massive across the board. You had France's consumer affairs and fraud control agencies.
Right. So y'all, listen, it's getting weird and messy with that. But this is the real news that I wanted to bring y'all to. It's just getting, once they get starting to talk about messing with kids and stuff, bro, it's like, that's when I gotta, But check this out. Let's get to this, right? I was doing some research and, I was thinking, I was like, bro, albino, there's a group of people, I think it's Sudan, where if you're an albino, meaning if you got pale skin, that you're like, it's like a defect, okay? If like in Africa, like if you got, if a black person has an albino kid, it's like they consider you like a defect. And they like, I'm gonna show y'all pictures of what they do so y'all can understand. But check this out. This is going to kind of open your mind to really how this thing been.
Eugenics is something that has resurfaced in some people's opinions and estimations. However, as a historian who studies eugenics, I can tell you that eugenics never actually went away. It's been with us almost since the inception of colonial bodies, and it's traveled near and far with the folks who decided to create this in order to define who they were and to define the world around them. Unfortunately, that has meant that many of us have been placed under a certain type of categorization that we don't quite understand, even though we live under it. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples before we move into the lecture itself. Beginning in, say, 1840, up until very, very recently, we've had instances where prison bodies within the United States actually, decided that in order for a prisoner to be released, they had to be sterilized, the female inmates mostly, and some male inmates, but specifically, Black females were sterilized as a condition of their release and parole from prison. And a lot of folks couldn't understand exactly why until people who study eugenics began to look at the protocol and the rationale behind it.
Okay. So I'm going to be breaking in on y'all with this. So y'all see that they made it to where they wanted people, especially Black people, to stop having kids, right? Now, I'm finna show you this because I'm finna make it all make sense. Y'all just got to stay with me. Stay with me here, right? Because I'm going to come back to this. But check this out, right? There are people saying that, right now, you got some white people that's saying white people are being discriminated against.
And it was challenging to
Check
go
this
to
out.
school because I remember when I was 10, I could pay my fellow mates to write
Pay them.
notes. Pay them. if I've given money at
Where did you get money?
My lunchbox money, I will give
Okay.
it to them to
Yeah.
like write for me the notes.
Oh,
If they don't do that, I won't have any notes to write.
Mm. Yeah.
And when you go and play with them, they will bully you, throw stones at you after school. So
Did they literally throw stones at you?
they did.
Yeah. Shoot,
And
that's
it was
cruel.
like something which is happening every day.
Mm.
Every day. So I remember even like 2 weeks I had to rebel from school. My parents will know that I'm going to school. Then when I know that they are going to work, I'll just hide somewhere so that they leave and then come back. Till my principal called my mom and said, I need to have a meeting with you because your child is not attending school. And my mom asked me, why are you not attending school? I said, no, I'm going to school. I said, no, your principal said they want to meet me. So I said to her, I hate school and I also hate you because I don't know why did you put me to school. And I don't know why did you make me in this color whereby all.
Okay, so do y'all see that? She's basically saying that they used to bully her in school for being albino. Now, with this eugenics, y'all stay with me here, right? I'm gonna let you hear what some albino people feel like where white people come from. Now, this gonna be crazy, but I'm gonna let you hear what some of them are saying, like that come from Africa, right? Albino. Check this out. Come from. All right, hold on. I missed y'all. No, y'all give me a second. Bear with me. Because I'm going to also show you how. Get back her up. I'm going to show you.
And it basically found with several investigations that the women sterilized in these prisons had 5 or more pregnancies, and they had been tested for their proficiency in reading, and it had been determined that they were breeders of retardation. They were breeders of poor stock. They were breeders of other people who would be a burden on society. And for those who study eugenics, you understand that this is a direct correlation back to the origins of eugenics, which we'll get to in just a moment. Also, sterilizations, again, are not new. And so we've had several instances in the United States recently where several states have decided to apologize formally for sterilization processes and protocol and offer reparations to some of the folks who were sterilized under these programs. The place that's before you right now, the Relf sisters, Mary Alice and Minnie, they were 12 and 14 years old, which means number one, they were underage. But they were considered to be a threat to society, to the state of Alabama, because they were young girls and their neighbors decided that there were too many little boys that seemed to be hanging around their back door. And they reported them to the police and to the state health department, who came around unceremoniously, picked them up in 1973 and took them to a health facility where they sterilized both females, gave them full hysterectomies at ages 12 and 14. There was no consent from the parents, and basically under the law, and these are state laws, but they're also federal laws in some instances. The law is that if it can be determined that you are a social defective, someone who is mentally or socially a burden on the state, you can be sterilized without your permission, because it's for the greater good of the state and it's for the greater good of the nation that you do not reproduce. So understanding that a lot of the things that we're talking about right now, I'm talking present day, but they have their origin in eugenics that began roughly 1840, all right? And so for those of you who don't know the term eugenics, sometimes you may hear it listed as.
Now, right, pure nasty, right? But listen, a lot of people think that, and I'm gonna give y'all from what my research on what I'm explaining on how I feel like that's how even white people came to existence. Like they only been around for a couple thousand years. I'm gonna show y'all what this backs up my point. I'm gonna get back to this, but this backs up my point. Check this out. So, you know, if you see an albino, that's a white person, right? I mean, that's a black person. And I'm not gonna say meaning black. I'm meaning that they came from black people, right? And I'm gonna show y'all a picture. Their hair won't be straight. Their hair would be like, you know, it still had a nappy look. But what we know of now is that, and I'm gonna show y'all these pictures, that they are Indian albinos. So basically, let me show y'all this. They're albinos that come from India. Let me show you here. And it's a different albino look than black people. And that's what this guy is that I'm showing y'all on the screen. This is albino with India. Okay, what they have as an Indian albino. But here is, I'm gonna show y'all the albinos. And I did see someone with straight hair. That's crazy, right? Check this out. This is the difference of them here. This is how our black albinos look. Check this out. So what I'm trying to tell y'all of what happened here is there's a little town in Sudan where if you are albino, it's like 1 out of every 1,400 kids turn albino. I mean, they're, you know, they don't have the melanin or not a lot of melanin and they got pale skin. But what they did is they was like, okay, these kids are evil or whatever. You got to keep them. And they got a whole bunch of albino kids just hanging together. Stick with me here. Stick with me. What I'm trying to say is what happened. That it was populated. They made this breed was populated to become a whole race of people. And it started with albinos. So yes, black people, it came the term white race because really they are just albino people. But throughout research and eugenics and making sure the albinos all mess with each other and keep the pure blood, this is how white supremacy was born. In my opinion, I can't tell y'all this is like, I'm just telling you, in my opinion, seeing right now they still got, you know, albino children that they say, hey, you're evil because your skin is white. I don't know why they're doing that, but they're sectioning them off. So I can see that these people clicked up and they were the first people that was like, we need to have rights. So it was like they did all of this and it was rights for them through eugenics. I think it was science back then that they was just like trying to see, man, we got white babies. What if we, you know, all the albinos just, you know, made it with the albinos. Then they probably moved to the Caucasus Mountains so they don't have to be segregated against. And then as time went on, it was like now we have a dominant albino breed, you know, because the original albino, the only thing is that they couldn't stand in the sun too long, like even back then. And it's the same thing for pretty much anybody that's, you know, pale skin. It's like the sun will damage them. So that's just my take. I want to know what y'all think, though. I'm gonna let the lady click back up, but I want to know what y'all think. But it is people that's really feeling like this is facts, bro. that this is how the white race came about. It came from black people, but they were being like treated like they weren't. You were evil. You weren't right. So they had to click up, and then this is what we see in this white power today. But I'm gonna go back to, because she got some nuggets in here. I'm gonna go back to this, and I want to know what y'all think. But check it out. I know some of y'all gonna be like, man, look, this is the science I'm trying to give y'all. And sometimes we gotta go back on science and do some common sense and make it make sense, because they've been playing with us for a long time doing evil.
Social Darwinism, or you may hear it as scientific racism. These are basically codified words of saying eugenics. And eugenics is the science. It's a fake science, to be clear. The science of better breeding, or the belief that you can improve the human population by tampering with the ability of people to have children. And so the concept originally came about as an agrarian thought, meaning it came from the idea that as you plant different types of crops or you breed different types of animals on a farm, a scientist decided, if we're breeding for better crops and for better stock, why can't we breed the American population to breed out the things that we don't want and to breed in the things that we do? And so you start to have a system that's set up to determine who has value to their lives. What are the things that we want to keep and what are the things that we want to throw away? And you can understand very clearly that when you add race to this and white supremacy is at the top of this, then.
So, but my point, I'm gonna let her go. I want y'all to understand that the start of white supremacy, on how did it start? It started from an albino, okay? That was the start, and it was probably them being, just how black people are now. And it was like they were outnumbered. So scientists was like, hey, man, it had to be somebody in the science field was just more of breeding this kind of specific. It's just like breeding dogs.
Obviously, Black bodies will almost always be at the bottom of this chain of human existence. And so you immediately get attempts to breed out Blackness from the general society. And so what we have is an idea, again, scientifically, that within your DNA, there are traits that are not just your eye color and your hair texture and your height that you're getting from your parents, but also their characteristic traits, their behavioral traits. And so things like lying, theft, immorality, criminality, poverty, your mental aptitude, all of these things were believed to have been in the DNA of your parents and your grandparents. And so to ensure that the right people bred with the right people to produce the type of stock that America wanted, you had to insist that with a marriage license, you were tested. And you were tested, given a whole series of examinations that were both written and visual, as well as having measurements of your own body taken. And this becomes important, and we'll get to this, but it becomes important because at some point, it's almost impossible with the race mixing through rape and coercive sexual relationships under enslavement. It's almost impossible to determine which children on a plantation were enslaved children and which ones were the free children of the slave owners, as opposed to arbitrary white men who came by, in addition to the white men who worked the plantation, who have raped these Black women. So you had to do certain measurements that dealt with the thickness of lips, the wideness of nostrils, the space between the eyes. And under eugenic protocol, there were 208 separate measurements that were taken of the human body to determine what the actual race of a person was. And so you went through these types of examinations in order to get marriage licenses. You did them sometimes in school. You did them at university. They were done in hospitals and any type of institutions, including penal institutions. So that first slide, when we talk about the measurements that we're taking of these ladies in order to determine whether or not they should be sterilized as a condition of their release or parole from prison, these were some of the same tests that were given to these folks, or that were instituted back in 1900, in 1850 and 1860, to determine who was Black, who was white, who was considered fit and who was considered unfit. And the lean of this is always, please always remember, once we get into eugenics, there is a branch of eugenics that deals specifically with Black people, that Black people orchestrated for themselves. And under that form of eugenics, it's fit over unfit as opposed to race necessarily. And you'll get into things like colorism and geography. So people from the South are less than those that are from the North. People who are undereducated or uneducated are less than those who are educated. And those who are dark skinned are less than those who are light skinned. These again are theories that all grow out of this original construct of eugenics. And so within eugenics, you have two different layers, the positive eugenics and the negative eugenics. Now in your mind, you may be saying all of it is negative eugenics. However, under the scientific labeling, positive eugenics says that those who have absolutely great genes, you come from a good family, your family believes in music, you have a high IQ test, everyone is teetotal, no one drinks, no one fornicates, which is almost impossible. But the belief was that the people who had great genes and had been bred well should reproduce with each other and only with each other, all right? Those who had negative traits, those who could be identified as using alcohol, being involved in illicit or extramarital affairs, young girls who had had sex out of wedlock. And please understand that things like sexual molestation and rape don't factor into this. If you were considered sexually active by force or willingly, you fell into this category of negative eugenics. And so other traits, if anyone in your family, say you've done none of these things, but you have a family member going back 2 or 3 generations that may have been known as the town alcoholic, or a mother or aunt who had had a relationship out of wedlock, because they weren't doing strict blood tests at this point, everything was based upon the word of someone else. And so if you had negative traits, the goal was to keep you from reproducing at all. All right. And so under that, the only way that you could keep that from happening was to segregate these bodies from others, or to sterilize through surgical methods to keep them from reproducing. And so when we get to the testing stage, these are a couple of examples of what the tests look like. You can understand how many people failed these tests. They were under what we call Goddard and Binet testing, and they were used by the military, for instance. They were used at Ellis Island for immigrants who were coming in to determine, you know, since no one's speaking English necessarily, and those who are speaking English don't speak it all the same way. Or geographically, you refer to some things by one name, and in another area, you refer to them by another. So you can't really standardize a test in the sense that everyone has the same base of knowledge in order to pass the test. And so what was decided was where they could do a literal test, then they would do that. But most people took the test as a visual one, the one that's on the right. So basically an instructor would come and say, what's missing on the first row? What's missing on the person? And you would have to draw in the lips in one instance, the eyes in another, the nose in the other, and the hand on the other. The point though is, if you are someone who does not speak the language, and please understand.
Right, if you was from somewhere else, but I'm getting to here, but I want to show y'all, I had found it for y'all. I want y'all to see what's been done and what's the results from all of this eugenics. Check this out. So here, this is the village I was telling y'all about, right?
The mother of 8, 4 of her children are living with albinism. She has faced a lot of difficulty raising her children after her husband left her many years ago.
I have gone through thick and thin to raise these children. They have missed their studies this term.
Nantumbe's condition is in sharp contrast to the life of Scovia Cimenta, a mother of 3 whose 2 children are living with albinism. Cimenta was distraught after her 2 children were born with the hereditary condition, which causes a total absence of pigmentation in the skin. But her supportive husband helped her go through it all.
The father himself
My bad, y'all.
said it's okay, fine.
Lack of skin pigmentation makes people with this condition more susceptible to skin cancers and sunburn. Farida's children are at a risk of contracting such diseases because she cannot afford to buy them the sunscreen lotion which Scovia applies.
So think about this, right? People with albino have to have sunscreen lotion because they don't have the pigmentation in their skin. And it's the same thing with the Caucasian community. So my point is, do you think, I want to know what y'all think, do you think the scientists did that from the albino people and then made albino be with albino, keep them in a certain section, and it just grew? Or some people think that black people really just moved up into the Caucasus Mountains and then their skin started turning white. I believe it came from an albino baby, but I want to know what y'all think, man. I'm gonna let her keep going because she is speaking facts, and I'm talking about the lady who's talking about it, not this here. But I wanted to let y'all understand what's going on. But check this out. She's gonna speak on all of that, on how the eugenics is being done, and people can't fathom to imagine, like, even the people that's in Mexico, man. I'm finna show y'all a picture of how people looked in Mexico in like the 1500s. Let me show y'all real quick, bro, because this is, I'm trying to fit this research in one and trying to give it to y'all, but check this out. This is how black people look, bro, in Mexico. Hold on. This is how black people look in Mexico, bro. And like, this is Aztec people. Now, if you Google right now, if you go Google and you go say, Google, was Aztec people black? They're gonna say no. They're like you know, they got the Eastern in them. But then when this picture come up, they're gonna think that you're crazy. Like, nah, this is Aztec people here. Okay? An Aztec couple, members of a once great Mexican tribe. So they don't understand that we was the ones that was in Mexico, and we was the ones that was in Americas with fully ran organization and societies. They had sculptures, bro. We had a lot of stuff here in America that they not trying to talk about that in these eugenics. So it's like, my take is that the albino started sometime after. It wasn't like this has been going on for a long period of time. The albino project happened, and that's when the white power and the white supremacy came on. It came from the albino kid. But let's get back to the breeding of blacks, because blacks breeded that. It wasn't like,
understand that enslaved Africans coming out of enslavement would not have had access necessarily to the same type of literary advantage, the literacy that others did. And it was again.
Now, I don't agree with her saying everything came out of Africa, but it was some people that they were bringing, but they did a lot of their testing in Africa, just like today. A lot of that testing, it was done in Timbuktu here in America too, and a lot of others that we don't know about.
It's the law to teach or to learn or to let it be known that you could read or write. So sometimes in order to keep from losing your life, you failed these tests on purpose, all right? Then you would say, well, okay, you've been tested. What does this mean? It means now you go into another area where the measurements are actually taken. And this is what I was talking about with the 208 different measurements. This is usually a 3-page chart. If you look on the right side, that's usually a 3-page chart.
Yeah.
And it has all of these different measurements that have to be taken.
Maya tribe too. Yep, was definitely black. But it's crazy because Google gonna lie to you. What's good? Tarot, but they gonna lie to us, bruh. I'm like, why would they lie like that when I got picture proof of a black Aztec person? Like, why you gonna lie on Google like that? But let me let them cook. I appreciate you for tapping in, Tarot, for real.
With relation to fingertips, eye sockets, ear holes, toes, the length of toes, all types of things. And it was a very ridiculous science on the one hand. And just to give you an example,
what's good, bro?
Many of you have in grade school done this little project where you put your hand on a piece of paper and you trace and outline your fingers along this outline on a sheet of paper. A lot of times they would say, oh, you've made a little turkey or whatever. You put your name on it, but in many instances, the teacher would keep that sheet of paper. The reason why they're keeping that is because this was an old eugenic test to determine a bit of aptitude about you. And it was
right, because they're trying to flip the script. People don't understand. They want to flip the script to make us. This is why a lot of people are in Mexico and they're really East Asian. Like they think that they, from the West, but they really not, because it just don't add up. But check this out. I'm gonna show y'all this. This give us all of the whatever brother that came out with this, but this is the actual, right? These are some of the Aztec. It was a lot of different tribes, but check this out. I'm gonna take y'all to the Mayan tribe, right? Where they gonna tell us in Google, they gonna tell us that this is fake, or this ain't, it's not us. So you see all of the noses. Look at this. Look at the earring. You could probably check somebody wearing some earrings like that right now. Well, check this out. This is the Maya tribe. Now, this is the original picture, bro. Do you see the skin color that they have on right there? Like, why would they? This is the same thing like somebody gonna put a white Jesus in the church, because the skin color means something, because they're trying to hide something. Look at the cups they had way back then. We talking about before 1300, bro. They had designed cups and all of this material, bro. So it's like it was a real civilization here that was thriving that ain't nobody talking about. They making it seem like it was just land and trees here. Nah, these people were the most advanced people. But this is just some of the Maya. Now, if you go to Australia, now they're saying that these people in Australia, that they are saying are aboriginals to Australia. They like, yeah, they've been here the longest. Which I'm not doubting or claiming that, but you can tell that they got the same Indian practices as we have in America, but they're black. So we understand that the people that they got trying to be Indians is not Indian, bro. You can't be from the West and not be black. It just can't happen. It's like the West, all of this was black people. It wasn't no Indians or Middle Easterns around here, but they trying to make us feel like that. So it's like this land was nobody's land. But let me let Lil Mama cook. And I appreciate y'all for tapping in, man. I got about 15 more in it. But yeah, man, this eugenic stuff, I'm going to keep going into this because it get even deeper. It goes deeper with how, like...
It wasn't that you could circle or trace your hand. The goal was to determine if your index finger, the one next to your middle finger and between your middle finger and your thumb, if that finger was longer than your middle finger, it was determined that you had the traits for potentially being a thief.
Yep.
That's called a pickpocket's finger. All right. So as ridiculous as that may sound, these measurements were kept and they were coded. And the ones that you're seeing right now are actually from Tuskegee Institute, which was is a historically Black college in the United States. So these were Black people at this point measuring other Black people to determine what their aptitude was and their abilities were based upon the measurements of their body. The Eugenics Records Office, which was begun by Francis Galton and Charles Davenport, 1840 to 1900, the organization gets its footing. And by the time we get to 1910 through the 1940s, the Eugenics Records Office is taking measurements and funding the measurements of Black bodies at state institutions, whether it's colleges, universities, asylums, anywhere that they can think of to get these measurements. And the goal was to
y'all check this out, right? So it's so crazy that I'm finna show y'all where they actually know this has been since 1939 when they was bombing out our towns and all of that. They knew back then they were trying to hide something. Check this out. This is from April 1939, bro. So it says here, it says a monthly record of anthropological science published under the direction of the Royal Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland. So it says original articles, Negro skeletal remains from Indian sites in the West Indies. Okay, so it says the recent paper in this journal by Buxton, Trevor, and Julian implies that an underformed Negro physical type inhabited the Virginia Islands in pre-Columbian times. Not only is this implication contrary to previously accepted findings for the Antillean area, as will be shown later, but it also fails to give adequate consideration to the possibility of those skeletal remains representing intrusive Negro burials. The mere presence of skeletons in a sand or shell mound of Indian origin, lacking careful stratigraphic records, is not certain evidence of primary association with the accompanying artifacts. Moreover, I venture to say that few physical anthropologists familiar with the American Indian skull would mistake for Indians those illustrated by Buxton, Trevor, and Julian. Indeed, most physical anthropologists would probably be less conservative and say Negro instead of Negro. So all I'm saying is, bro, they knew right then and there that at these Indian sites that y'all have, that y'all saying that look like these Easterns, these, you know, like Middle Easterns, they look Black, bro. So it's basically trying to get people to keep lying. It's like we're trying to get people to keep lying about the ethnicities of the original people. That's why you got the $5 Indians over there right now claiming that they the Indians. You know, they got breeded and then they was like, okay, let's push these people over here. Because at one point it was so many Black people, bro. It was just Black and it was a little bit of albino people. And to go against Blacks, you're going to have to need a lot more races. This is why we see a lot of immigration here. It's a lot of different shades that they trying to throw at us right now. But I'm finna let the lady go back and cook. But I had to bring that to y'all. But what Cal Dawg said, because it goes against the fake narrative that we all come from Africa. That's where they trying to pile us up to all come from, because that's where all that experiment probably happened. They was doing a lot of experimenting there with the breeding and the same thing they did with dogs, bro. You got certain dogs that they be breeding and they come out a certain kind of way because of
determine who was fit, who was unfit, and it's to basically say within the Black body, there is a race trait that determines that all Black people are considered to be subhuman, and therefore they're not worth the breeding. They have bad stock.
Destiny.
And so within this classification, you'll also see, many of you have heard terms like idiot, imbecile, moron. Those were terms that are actually eugenic terms that came to define a person's aptitude based upon those measurements that we just got finished talking about. Between the measurements and the test.
So y'all check this out now, just so y'all stand with me here, right? when a child was born albino, probably back in the days. Now, I don't think it was right. You feel me? But this is what happened. When a child was born albino, you was considered a defect. You ain't right. It was like you're evil. That's what it was for if you had albino skin. And I think that if they was saying that and they kind of just put that onto the people. So now I think somebody was doing the scientific research, breeding them, and just had a lot of them. And then it was like, okay, we got to keep them safe because they're going to be prosecuted. They're going to get mauled. Went to the Caucasus Mountains, and that's when Europe and, all of this. Now, it probably ain't going exactly like that, but that's where I'm coming from. That's where I'm thinking Margaret Sanger. Yeah, man, she was with it too. She was with it too.
It would be determined what your aptitude, your mental aptitude was. And if your aptitude was between 1 and 3, a 1 and 3-year-old, you were considered an idiot, low-grade imbecile between 4 and 6 years old.
But hold on and think about this too. We have a lot of autism kids right now that's being born, especially Black, and it's males. It's a lot of the males. So it's like, bro, this eugenic stuff has been mastered. It's deep now, It's like it's something going on where they know something.
Medium grade imbecile 7 and 9 years old, high grade imbecile 10 or 11-year-old, and the moron 12 to 13 years old. Most African Americans in this country outside of enslavement, it was believed that they did not have the aptitude for many things, even if they tested extremely high and they were off the chart and they were considered to be genius.
Listen, that's why the whole structure is changed. And that goes to everything. It's a reason by it. Just like with marriage license, with everything that they got, bro, it's a reason for it. And just like she's saying, they're trying to make it so we're not as intelligent. They're going after our intelligence because they know that that's going to be the key to get them out of power. So it's like, if they keep doing this, that's what
a lot of times they were restricted within that space to a grade level of medium grade imbecile, which meant they had to aptitude. If you can see on this chart, it tells you what the person is able to do as far as their jobs. And so you'll start to see simple menial work, simple manual work, and then some complex manual work. And usually African Americans were placed between high grade and low grade imbeciles where simple.
Now, I'm going to give y'all a personal take on this, right? How they seeing these kids. My son just turned 7. I got boys, but he did a IQ test, right? And when they did the IQ test, he came out, the scores was high, right? But they gave in the letter they put, but because of, they trying to say he's HDID, like he's hyper, that it could have been higher. And I'm like, there is this whole setup of how they grade our smartness and how smart we are, and that it needs to be a total nother scale, because how they even set this up is already rigged. They already rigged it. Some of us still gonna, score out, but most of this
manual
stuff
work is what was believed they actually had the capacity for. It was believed that Black minds stopped developing at a certain point. And so because of this, you did not want Black women to breed. You did not want them to have children. If you wanted them to have children, it would be in a space where you could control not only their reproduction, but their production. Their children were not to go to school. Their children were to immediately become a part of the workforce and the labor force.
But why? It's for 2 reasons, y'all, why they didn't really want Black women to have children. It's because them having a albino, like having albinos, I think was a bad thing, because it's just showing us really, what's going on. It just leads back to them, I think. So I think knowing that a Black woman can have a white baby is just, with eugenics, and you go back to white power, it's It all makes sense.
And so because of that, you understood that you were putting duress on a family, and you were convincing many Black women not to have children or to delay having children because of the crises and the trauma that may have been involved in having children that you understood would be restricted from actually enjoying their lives in a concrete and livable way. And so what you start to have are thousands, I dare say millions really, millions of Americans that over the course of about 80 years went under the knife and were sterilized under public health mandates across this nation. We've had instances with the Buck versus Bell case, which started out in 1924 and went all the way to the Supreme Court, where there were 3 generations. One woman had been drinking. They considered her to be a drunkard. Her daughter was molested and became pregnant. And at that case, at that point, Carrie Buck, it was determined as a pregnant teenager, even though she had been raped, because her mother had also been an alcoholic, she became the test case for the Supreme Court. And it was determined they could not have any more imbeciles. That is the way the law came down. The state had a right to sterilize her based upon the fact that they had shown that there were 2 generations of feeble-minded people, which meant in addition to being either moron or imbecilic, these other terms, there was also a sexual component to it, which meant she was having sex early and she had begun to reproduce early. The child that Carrie Buck had, they determined, a eugenicist came in, looked at the baby, did measurements on the baby, and at 3 months old determined that the baby was also considered to be a dysgenic, tainted baby. And so it is, under my research, I found that the youngest that a sterilization has ever been performed in this country was the age of 3. All right. And the first U.S. state to enact a sterilization law in 1907. I know you can't actually answer me, but it was the state of Indiana.
So check this out.
So I want you to understand.
So check this out, right? I want to show y'all this. So she's saying that it was 3. They had babies at 3 years old doing this. But check this out. This is an albino town, secret albino town. This is pretty much what
Opioid addiction gets between you and what you love. Once monthly Sublocade.
Hello everyone, Ruhi Sinet here.
So white people were probably the original liberals, bro, because they was like trying to have...
There's a special case in Tanzania. 1 in every 1400 births results in albinism. The highest rate of albino baby births in the world is here, about 10 times more than anywhere else. Because the gene pool is quite narrow due to consanguineous marriages. Since the people are black here and albinos are too...
So y'all see, this is the most place that has the most albino. So it's like
white. People in the rural areas think that albinos are cursed for being too pale, and this curse could spread to other people. Rural population in Tanzania was reported at around 65%. Imagine that everyone you know, including your parents, has never met a white person. Some of your neighbors want to slaughter you, supposedly for bringing bad luck to your rural community. When some pregnant mothers make eye contact with a random albino kid in the streets, they spit on the ground to not give a birth to an albino child. There are witch doctors in Africa and the people here rather to go to them instead of going to real doctors. And these witch doctors claim that albinos are cursed for being too white and they should be killed. And if their white limbs such as arms and legs are cut off and consumed by boiling them with herbs, they can cure diseases. Their diseased body is somehow believed to be some kind of cure for healing, and this gives another reason for albinos to be hunted.
How are you kids? You fine? Thank you. There are children up to 6th grade in this class. As you can see, they're studying here in mixed classes. The reason he squints his eyes is that there's a lot of light here. And when they're exposed to light, these people have difficulty seeing. First of all, they need sunglasses. And you can see different spots on their skin. They need to use special lotion for these spots. They also have to wear hats to protect themselves from the sunlight, right?
Yeah. Right, so I'm going over that and brought y'all that just just to say, right? I think that scientists will be trying to play with and breed albinos, and this is what came up with the Caucasian. It's crazy saying this, but I think this is the whole thing. Cow Dog, what you think, man? Y'all think this is the origin for the pale skin? It makes sense why they would want to go to the Caucasus Mountains. This is a whole community of them that people are protecting, because it's people over there that say, bro, that they the devil if you got white skin. You ain't got no pigment. It's just crazy. It's crazy. But I'm gonna have a part 2 in this, y'all. I'm gonna keep digging, going into this. I wasn't able to put everything in there. God say, yeah, you believe it. It makes sense though, right? It ain't like, it just makes more sense than anything else that people are saying. Like, it's just white people was just here too. No. I believe they just got here. Yeah, it's a possibility. Yeah, some people think they came from like alien, but I mean, this is something we see. We know. We looking at pale skin that don't have, like, they need sunscreen, bro. Like, if you got this kind of condition as a black person, you can't be in the sun. So it's like, that's the same thing we see with the Caucasian nation, with their skin. So I would just like to know what a white person would think about that. Somebody saying that, like, damn, bro, you really black for real. You just didn't have the pigment. You didn't have the melanin. But yeah, man, y'all smash that like button for me, man. I appreciate the tarot call, dog. Y'all tapping in. I got a part 2 of this, man. I'm gonna do some more talking about our ancestry, better understanding the self, because they be trying to tell us anything and thinking, pee on us and tell us it's raining, and we just supposed to believe. But I want to know more what y'all think, man. I like you saying that they came from somewhere else, like an alien or something. But we'll see, man. But respectfully, they're like a birth defect, bro. Respectfully, for real though. But listen, I appreciate y'all, bro. This was a good one. I gotta listen. I'm gonna have another one on there tomorrow. They have been experimenting on that. Check out medical. I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna drop something tomorrow, y'all. I'm gonna go live tomorrow. We're gonna touch back on this subject, man. I'm gonna see what people think. I'm gonna open up the lines, but I wasn't able to tap everything in. But yeah, they albinos, man. They albinos. But I appreciate y'all for tapping in. Y'all hit that like button, subscribe, man. I'll catch y'all on the next video tomorrow. We're going live. Peace and love.